Episode 57 of The Pilot podcast takes off now.
Hello, my name is Jim from the Captain Moonbeam channel on YouTube.
What is going on, Aviation, and welcome back to The Pilot podcast. My name is Justin, and I am your host. Today is episode 57, and I am talking with Jim Sorsby, also known as Captain Moonbeam. Shout out to Dues19 for forcing me to have Jim on. A joke, because I did want to have him on, but he held the podcast hostage, as he said he would not listen to any more episodes until I have released Captain Moonbeam. So here you go, Deuce. This is for you. Aviation, you are going to love this episode. Captain Moonbeam, also known as Jim, has a great story. One that is very unique, and I'm very excited to tell his story. I think that it's really going to resonate with a lot of you guys, and I think you'll enjoy it. I just want to say thank you guys for listening to today's episode, and if you do like today's episode, leave me a review on iTunes. Check out our website, thepilot.hq.com, where you can find all the information that you need to know about the podcast. Also, let me know what you think of the website. The website is a new design, thanks to my buddy Matt from Instagram. He has done a great job on it, and let me know what you think. Aviation, I don't want to keep you any longer, so without further ado, here's Jim Sorsby. Hey, Jim, thanks for coming on the Pilot podcast.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Like I said to you earlier, it has been very requested to have you on the show, so I'm really excited. I know my listeners will be very excited to listen to the podcast and hear your story.
Well, I'm always so surprised when I hear somebody wants to hear my story.
Right?
And I don't know why that is. Maybe that's being old school or something like that.
There are people out there that want to hear it. So let's go ahead and start. Let's dive right into why did you want to become a pilot? Where was the original inspiration?
It started when I was either 6 or 7 years old. My dad worked for Delta. For a while, he was in reservations, and he hated that. And he started working the ramp, and then he worked the ramp for the rest of his life. And so as a kid, we were able to get non-rev passes, and we traveled to see relatives. And we took a trip. I can't remember where it was, but we were at Memphis International before they'd even built the terminal. Walking out to the airplanes, they all had props, and it was a covered walkway. And it was a 2-engine Delta Airlines turboprop. I'm guessing maybe it was a DC-4 is what it was. Yeah, and I sat on the wing. I could by the window, I could see the prop out there spinning, and I was hooked from the very beginning. And then we continued as kids, flying all over the country. When my dad had time off, and we did it on the cheap, stayed at cheap places, stayed with relatives and stuff like that. But I just loved every one of those adventures, every one of those experiences. And I always wanted to talk to the pilots up front. And back then you could, you walked on board as a kid and said, hey, I want to look at the cockpit. And they're like, oh, yeah.
You want to watch us land? Yeah.
Right. And I remember specifically one night as a kid, I told the flight attendant that I wanted to see the cockpit if it was okay. And she took me up there, and they just opened the door, and I went in the cockpit, and it was nighttime and all the lights and everything. It was just so incredibly cool. All that did was reinforce it. But then later in life, when I finally became an adult, I had convinced myself I could not afford to do it. It was too expensive.
Right.
And it was very expensive. And I eventually got married and had a couple of kids. We were living in Memphis, and my in-laws, my father-in-law was a pilot.
Oh,
and they bought me a introductory flying lesson that I went on. This was for Christmas. And it was like, oh my gosh, that's it. I came back, I said, I want to be a pilot.
It's like, honey, sorry.
Yeah.
Going to
I
flight
talked
school.
to relatives about getting money for flight school and all sorts of stuff. And it was stop and start like it is for most people that start older. I was 28, I believe is how old I was.
Okay.
And it took me probably 2 years to get my private pilot's license.
Yeah.
After that, though, it accelerated a little bit. And
so I was just going to ask, what were you doing before? What were you doing? So you got married. Obviously, you had kind of a career going. What was your original career?
I was I'm not even sure I should say this, but I will say this. It kind of leads into it. I worked in restaurants for a long time. And then I actually was making money going to the racetrack, the Greyhound racetrack in West Memphis. I kid you not.
Yeah.
And we went by to visit my grandmother one day, and my wife just happened to spill the beans that she said, "Oh, how's work going?" I said, "Oh, it's going fine." She said, "Oh, he hasn't worked in months. He's been going to the dog track." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, my life is ruined." The family humiliation. And I went to the mall.
Yeah.
We were going to the mall to get something, and I walked by a store, and there was a sign that said "Help Wanted." And I actually picked up the sign, took the sign with me inside, and told them, "I'm here. I'm the guy you need." Explained why it was. It was a little software store, and they hired me. I became a manager, an area manager, and I ended up having the highest profit store in the company.
Okay, look at you.
And yeah, but this is why this comes into flying. Okay, so at the same time as when I took this flying lesson, and I started talking about it a lot, and the guy that was in charge of the region and some other people started to get really concerned about what I was going to do. And he came down to talk to me and said, "We really worried about what's going on here, that you may be leaving us." And I said, "Oh, no. This is just a hobby. It's fun. And it's just something to do on the side, just a little passion here, but I'm not leaving." And he flew back to Pennsylvania. And that night I thought about it, and I called him the next morning. He said, I'm wrong. I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice right now. I'm gone."
Oh, dang.
And I ran off to be a pilot, basically, is what happened. Yeah.
How far along in that training was that for you? So when did you tell him that you were gonna leave eventually and just focus on being a pilot?
At that point, I had gotten my private pilot. It was right after I had gotten my private pilot's license.
Okay, so you couldn't even make money off flying then. So you were like,
"Oh,
nope.
no,
Yeah.
no." Which was I always told people, "Look, don't do what I did. Even though
I'm not a good example.
Doesn't mean it was the best choice." And I was thinking about doing my instrument rating. So right there, I quit, and we ended up moving to Heber Springs, Arkansas. I went down to Little Rock to a place called Central Flying Service, and ended up getting all my ratings there, ended up working for them. When I first got all my ratings, they wouldn't hire me. Because they didn't need any help.
Right.
And it was very slow, the industry at that point. There was no hiring whatsoever. So I went to Conway, Arkansas, talked to a guy that had a 150 who wanted to rent it out. And I said, "Look, I'll get the students here if you'll let me instruct in it." And he did. And I started instructing in Conway, Arkansas, and started building a little following at a ground school. And when they saw that I actually had a following, they were like, "Oh, yeah, why don't you? Yeah, we got room for you. Come on over." So I went over there, and like I said, there was zero hiring at that point. And I ended up getting about 2,000 hours instructing.
Okay.
And I got into their charter department at the same time. I was doing part-time charter, which was in the Bonanza, the Duchess, King Air 90, King Air 200.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I started off getting my multi-time,
right,
turboprop time. After that, I went to Trans-States in St. Louis, flying the Embraer 120.
Okay.
Eventually, they sold off all the 120s, and they wanted everybody to go to New York because they had opened a domicile there.
Yeah.
And at that point, I went back down to Little Rock, because I couldn't do that. I had a family of four.
Right.
I was making $14,000 a year. I mean,
not worth uprooting everyone. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I literally was one of those people that was qualified for food stamps that was flying airplanes with 30 passengers.
What year was this? What did you say?
92. It's been a long time.
It's just very important for the pilots that are coming up now to really realize what the industry was like. This is new. Regional airline pilots making 60, 80 grand. Like, this is all new. It's relatively new within the last 5 years, maybe 7 years. So
it's changed.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of them appreciate what the past was, and they don't understand that just because you're making good money now doesn't mean that it's always going to be like that. Because as everyone knows, airlines corporate aviation especially are all cyclical and things could change very fast, but they need to understand just kind of where it's been in the past. And I've talked to past people on the podcast and they're regional pilots, like you said, on food stamps. They're sleeping on benches in between layovers because they couldn't get a hotel. So it's like they didn't pay for anything. All you did, you were lucky to fly a regional plane. And a lot of times people flying regional jets had upwards of 2,000, 3,000 hours. They weren't getting hired at 1,500 hours. So it's definitely, times have definitely changed.
Oh, yeah, it's much better now. It was tough. And one of the things you had to do was you had to sign a $10,000 training contract.
Oh, my gosh.
You were liable for that if you left within 12 months. But and this is really kind of the salt in the wound here of that training contract. It was to be a first officer on an Embraer 120, big turboprop, 30 passengers.
That's the Brasilia, right?
That was the Brasilia.
Yeah, the Brasilia. Yeah.
So the problem is, though, if you left, there was nothing you could do with that training. You weren't trained for another operation. You had no type rating that you could use.
Oh,
you were just a co-pilot in it.
Yeah, so it wasn't
on the hook for the training. So, that was really, and what they would do is, and this is something that pilots still do today, and it has some truth to it, but it's also got a hook in it. It's got a pretty barbed hook in it, and that is, you've got to do this to get to the airlines. You got to pay your dues. You got to pay your dues. Well, let me tell you, there were a lot of people that had been at Trans-States for years. I say Trans, but it was the same for all of them. It was TW Express. That were very depressed and bitter because they couldn't get an airline job. They'd been there for, I don't know how long. And they had come from another commuter or something like that. And for one reason or another, it wasn't happening. And they weren't happy with the situation that they were in.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's a lot better now.
Yeah, it's a lot better now. And like you said, it wasn't just Trans-States. It was every regional, even corporate departments. Corporate departments, it was very common for you to have to pay for your type rating. It wasn't like, it's very new, just like everything else we talked about, that you are getting a free type rating and not even a contract assigned. Like a lot of places don't require a training contract anymore. It is very much a pilot's market. And it's just crazy the changes. The people I talked to at the company I'm at now said when they first came here, they had to pay, it's like you said, they had to pay 10, 15 grand for their type rating, sign a contract if they left and they owed all that money back. It's like, that's crazy.
It is. And at the very same time, I had a friend who ended up, I can't remember where he went to, but one of the requirements was that you go through their training and get your type rating in a 737 and you pay for it. Mm-hmm. When you finished, there was no guarantee of a job.
Great.
And he was one of the people that got type, spent the money, and did not get a job.
Wow.
Yeah. So and I know this is not everybody agrees with me, but I would never ever pay for a type rating.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, either they need you or not, and if they want you to pay for your own type rating, they don't need you bad enough.
Yeah. No, definitely. I would agree with that. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it kind of all the way back to your training. So we kind of talked about how you had a software job or you were in sales essentially, right?
I was a manager of a store.
Manager of a store, all right.
It was in a mall, and they sold home computers and software.
Okay.
Computers and stuff.
What was training like while you still had the job? Because you kind of had training with a job and training with no job. So you were able to commit full-time training later. What were the difficulties with, because a lot of students now need to have a part-time job or a job to help pay for their training. So talk a little bit about how you kind of managed your time and how you made time for flying while you're working full-time.
Well, there's even more to that part of the story because, like I said, I had a family of four. I lived 65 miles north of the airport.
Oh my gosh.
Little Rock, where I was doing the training. So I tried to work some part-time jobs at the same time, and it was difficult. Mm-hmm. And then when I got my ratings, I still didn't make that much. I was an instructor. I was only making, I'm thinking maybe $800 to $1,200 a month.
Dang.
Yeah, it was not much at all. And when I started doing the charter stuff with them, I made more. So I would say if you've got the money and you don't have to work, that's great. Just plow into it, go as fast as you can, and get it done. But if you can't, and you've got to stop and start, that's not the end of the world. It's like when you go for an interview, they don't say, oh yeah, we just noticed it took you 3 years to get your private pilot's license. Nobody cares.
Mm-mm.
All they care about is, do you have the basic qualifications of the job? Can you fly the airplane? Can you get along with the rest of the people that are working here? Yeah. That's it. Occasionally you find a place that requires a college degree, and the airlines the majors tend to require a college degree. But I guarantee you, if hiring gets bad enough, that requirement goes away.
Oh, without doubt.
Yeah, it's just a filter is all it is.
Yeah, all they care about is just covering the insurance minimums on the time and your ratings.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I got on a tangent here. I was going to tell you what else happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm working full-time for this company. I live in Heber Springs, Arkansas, 65 miles to the north. One day, one of the instructors decides he wants to get a college degree. He said, hey, we're just sitting around here. Let's drive down to this place, Arkadelphia in southern Arkansas, 65 miles further south. Jeez. Why don't you just go with me? We don't have students today, and check it out. So I go with him, and we take the tour, do the whole thing, and he decides not to do it. And I sign up, drive to Memphis the next morning, get all my transcripts because I'd gone to college there, come back. And so I'm driving now 240 miles round trip on Tuesday and Thursday while I'm a full-time instructor to get my bachelor's degree.
And not only that, but you have a family of 4.
Yeah, which turned into a family of 5 eventually.
Oh, geez. So what was, Well, I mean, just talk about that. So how did you balance that? How did you balance family life and kind of school and flight instructing and building time? Because we all know when you're building time, flying is king. Did you have to sacrifice school for flying or vice versa?
I really, in some ways, had to sacrifice, the flying because I didn't manage it very well. Mm-hmm. Sometimes some opportunities would come up and I just have to say, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So that slowed me down a little bit, but it didn't stop me because I was pretty persistent. I kept pushing at it. And, I think I made the right choice along the way. Definitely because I'm still married and a lot of people are not.
No. So obviously you did something right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So did you finish your bachelor's then?
I got a Bachelor of Science in Aviation.
Okay.
I started out originally, in microbiology in Memphis, but ended up after 3 years not finishing up. Yeah. So I transferred credits over and finished in aviation.
Okay, nice. Yeah, my degree is also in aviation as well. So talk about check rides and stuff. What were your check rides like? Did you have any issues when you were doing your training at all, or did you fail any check rides? It was pretty smooth sailing?
I failed 2 check rides.
Okay.
The first one was all my fault.
Yeah.
And that was my initial multi-engine way back. And what I did, and this is a classic mistake, the first takeoff, he pulls that throttle back. And I was ready for it. I mean, I was like a coiled snake ready to strike. I was so prepped for this and hyped up. And I slammed that rudder on top of the good engine. And I slammed it so fast and so hard that plane swung over. And at this point, it's like, what the hell? Which engine was it? So he said, okay, that's good. Let's go back. So it was a learning experience. And then the next time I calmed down, came in much more smoothly and
a little less rudder.
Yeah. And the other was years later. And I'm not saying this to denigrate anybody that works for the FAA or anything like that. I had this job flying freight in a Cessna 210, and I had to take a check ride with the FAA. It should be the simplest check ride in the world. Okay, and we're just about done. And we're doing this ILS, and, I'm under the hood, so I'm scanning the instruments. And what did he do? He pulled something, or he flipped the frequency on the localizer, and all of a sudden, my needle went off or it went dead. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what the hell? And I glanced up and saw it was on the wrong frequency. I didn't realize he did this, so I popped it back in, and it came back.
Yeah. Yeah, naturally. So, it's like, what else would you do? Yeah.
That's right. So we're getting close to decision height. I'm like, I'm looking at it, scanning it. I'm thinking, okay, 300 feet here. And it does it again. This time I just hit it right away. And as soon as I hit it, it said, bust, you're done. Huh. I'm like, what? What the hell?
Did he want you to go around? What was the mindset of that?
Well, I'm sure what he wanted me to do was to go missed. That's what he wanted to do. And I was flying the plane like if I had really flown the airplane.
Yeah. And I got cargo, I got to land, so let me put the localizer back on. That works perfectly fine.
Yeah. I don't know why it's flipping like that. And he said, and this was like right at about decision height, that I had gotten, I can't remember what it was, half scale decision, deflection right at that point. I don't think I did. Yeah. And I think what the real issue was that I pissed him off when I started doing that.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because were you guys in actual IMC when this was happening too?
Oh, no, it was VFR.
Okay, I was going to say, I was like, that'd be a little reckless if he's out there switching localizers, actual IMC.
Yeah, but it was definitely, it was a check ride. It was VFR. There were no issues like that whatsoever.
Huh. Yeah, that sounds like an interesting way for him to want you to go around. It's like, simple, hey, go around. Would have been good to see me execute it. Or
and I was just going to say, look, I've taken plenty of rides with the FAA and gotten along with them every time. Haven't had that issue.
Yeah, sometimes people, I don't know. I've heard this, and people have also said this is true, but sometimes they have to have failures. They have to fail people that can't be passing everyone, or else it kind of raises red flags. So I don't know if you fell into that kind of space with him, but it definitely sounds like an interesting way to go about failing someone on a check ride or inducting a check ride.
And it's, you're right. They look at it as an issue if you haven't failed so many people because they statistically think that there are going to be certain percentage of people that are not prepared for it and probably should, have to redo it. But I and the other half of this is I had a check ride with the FAA and it was in a jet. And I was going to go take this ride with this guy. The guy called me the night before and said, hey, I just wanted to call you and let you know if you want to reschedule this, I totally understand. But the FAA, there are a couple of them coming out tomorrow, and they're going to be auditing me because they think that I'm too easy on people and just giving away check rides.
Oh, shoot.
And I thought, well, that's probably the worst situation right there. And I said, oh, that's no problem. I'm coming.
Oh, wow. You're a better man than me.
And I probably did more on that check ride than any other ride.
I bet.
And I passed the check ride, because I did everything that he wanted to. Then they had some stuff they wanted to see, and there were two of them. And it was a pretty intense oral also because he was really hammering it. Yeah. And they had a few things they wanted to go over also. But I got through with it. But then about 2 months later, he voluntarily rescinded. I mean, he voluntarily turned it in. He was no longer an examiner.
Oh,
he
wow.
decided that I don't know what was going on, but that came to an end.
Huh. So yeah, maybe something with FAA that they didn't. I don't know. That's weird. I've never really heard of anyone voluntarily rescinding their examiner status. So it's a first.
Well, I mean, if you look back over the past 20 or 30 years, every now and then they do catch somebody that's doing that kind of stuff. I don't know what was going on.
Right.
Like I said, I didn't know the details before I got there or what had happened afterwards.
Right.
But I was just talking about two check rides that were extremes of how they normally.
What was your mentality like after you failed your first check ride, where it was the one that you said was actually your fault, where you kind of messed up and were at fault? Did you think your career was over after that? Or were you like, no, it's all right. I get another chance. I'll be fine.
No, I didn't. But, here's the thing about it also. This is how I've always been. Okay, my career, what part of the career ends? Most people, when they say stuff like that, they're thinking about your career climbing up to the left seat of a 747 with United Airlines or something. I thought, well, if it is, well, that's not ending my life because I enjoy instructing and doing the charter and other stuff I'm doing.
Right.
So in my opinion, that wasn't a career ender, and it wasn't. Like I said, nobody cares, about that. But afterwards, I mean, there was no point. It was my fault. I'm the first one to say that.
Yeah, I can't blame that on anyone.
Yeah. It's just the way it was.
Yeah.
And so I came back, rescheduled and went through it with a breeze.
Yeah.
It was a learning experience for me. Yeah.
Well, when I took my check rides, my examiners, I got lucky. I had good examiners, and they always prefaced it with like, hey, like this is still a learning experience. Like you only have 100 hours, 150, 200 hours, whatever time limit you have. It's like, I mean, if you fail, like it's not the end of the world. I have to do my job at the end of the day. And if I don't think you're able to fully operate under this rating that you're going after, like I have to fail you, but use it as a learning experience, build from this. It's like, I can still kind of walk you through what you should have done, and we can talk about it later on the ground, what you should have done. And then we'll come back at it tomorrow. So it's definitely a learning experience. And I think that it is kind of an aura around failing a check ride where it's like, dang, now I'm not going to be a 747 pilot for United, or what is a 787 now that the 747s are gone. But it's like you said, it's like there's so many other things you can do, and that's not even true. You could still fly a 787 for United with a failed check ride. I guarantee you there's tons of people at United, Delta, American that have failed check rides and are still there and flourishing and doing really well. So
I will tell this little story.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who spent most of his career flying Part 121, supplemental freight and stuff like that. And he told me, I don't know if it's true, whatever, but I'm just repeating it here. He said, guys like that have a bus, they just love to hire them because they know they're not going to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's their mentality.
I could see that.
You got to get over that mentality, recover and come back strong.
Definitely. No, I would definitely agree. And yeah, I could see that because they want people to stay at their company forever, no matter what company it is. Even regionals want you to stay there for a while. Right. They don't want to have to hire new people and spend more money. So if they think they can hire someone that won't leave, they're definitely going to do that.
That's right. And people create their own limitations. Right. Is what they do.
Oh, I love that. That's a good point. Yeah. Definitely a good point. It's like, oh, well, I can't do this because of this, or I've never flown a multi-engine plane, so I only want to fly singles. Or it's like, it's like, no, you can do anything. Like flying is just building upon itself. It's like math. It's like you go to pre-calculus and you go to calculus. Like here, you start single, then you go to maybe multi-twin, and then you go to a turbo, and then you go to a turbine, and then you go to PT6, and you go to the jets. You just kind of build your way up every single time. So you don't limit yourself on whatever you can do. Always apply and always go after what you want.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's what I would say. Yeah.
And speaking on that, what was you mentioned a little bit earlier about how you were building time, you were flight instructing, then you got on the charter side. Talk about finding those jobs and what you did to position yourself to get those jobs.
I tell people this all the time, and this kind of really also interlinks with people who haven't even started their training yet. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of it is people you need to meet people in aviation if you haven't started or if you're already well along, because the first people that know about jobs are pilots in that area. Mm-hmm. A lot of jobs never make it to job boards and stuff like that, because the first thing they do, especially for small flight departments, is they say, hey, do you know anybody that might be interested since you're leaving us? Or do you know, since we're expanding, do you guys know any people that you think would fit real well? That's how a lot of it happens. So because of that, the general public or some guy in another town would never have any idea that that job was even open for consideration.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. And you'll find also with some of the airlines actually having a reference from a pilot in their ranks carries weight also.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I've been told many times that the major airlines love having references. So do what you got to do to get those friends.
That's right.
Yeah. Go buy a ticket and hang out at the gate and talk to every pilot you can.
Well, absolutely right. And, if you're the kind of person that just does not get along well with others, mm-hmm. you're going to have a problem in this industry because relationships are important, because you spend a lot of time with these people really close. Yeah, for sure. If you're a solo act, you're going to have a hard time at this.
No, for sure. I mean, a lot of people look in to hire someone that's going to do well in a crew environment, because like you said, you're going to be stuck with this person sitting next to you for hours. Days. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you can't get along with people, then they're going to sniff you out. And the last thing someone wants to do is be stuck with, I'm stuck with this guy again. It's like, don't be that guy. Be the guy that everyone wants to fly with.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a small world, especially in aviation,
it is.
as you well know.
Yeah, for sure. And so you networked to get these jobs that you got to build. So what kind of jobs were they? What jobs did you first have? Obviously, you said instructing. What came after instructing?
Well, I flew charter.
Mm-hmm.
And
what planes did you fly?
Years. Well, in charter,
yeah.
Gosh, through the years, because most of my time has been flying charter.
Okay.
Even though I had a couple of years with the regional, I flew everything from a Bonanza. I'll just run through real fast.
Go for it. Yeah, list them.
Bonanza, Duchess, Baron, King Air 90, King Air 200, King Air 350. I flew Citation 500, Ultra, Encore, Bravo, Citation 650, the 3 and the 6, the Citation Excel. I flew the Citation Mustang, the Citation M2. I flew, I'm trying to think of which ones I'm typed in and which ones I flew charter in.
That's crazy. We could have a whole podcast with you just listing all the planes you've flown. It'd probably be an hour.
Oh, I know. I mean, I was like, what I do is I kind of count on my fingers.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, and I think I'm missing one.
A ton about because I left out all the Falcons.
Yeah, jeez.
The Gulfstreams and stuff like that.
So you can fly it all. Someone calls you, it's like, yeah, let's go.
I can't fly them all.
Yeah,
but I'm definitely willing to try.
Yeah. They need you for the space shuttle. You're the guy to call.
Oh, that is so fun. You're not going to believe this.
Oh my gosh, what did I start? What happened?
One of the guys I used to fly with, one of my buddies, actually flew the space shuttle simulator. They were doing a study on their crews getting nausea and how that affected their ability to fly the shuttle. So they were bringing in professional pilots, and they would put these electrodes at the base of their head and give them shocks while they were trying to do an ILS in the shuttle simulator.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah. They were mild, but it would induce vertigo, nausea is what it would do.
Oh, wow.
And they were doing a study how to reduce it. So this friend of mine would always say, I flew the shuttle.
I flew the shuttle, and I was getting electrically shocked by the government at the same time.
It's like that song, Shock the Monkey.
Yeah.
That's what I used to tell you.
That's hilarious.
Another guy I flew with in charter, who just recently retired, had worked for NASA flying a 747.
Oh, cool.
For one of their programs where they were doing had a telescope in the 747. Doing that. So you're going to meet some really interesting people in aviation.
Boy.
And just because you're flying a Citation 1, a little bitty jet for a little charter company, doesn't mean you're not going to meet some really interesting people in your career to fly with them.
And it also goes on the statement that we made earlier where you don't have to be an airline pilot to have a good career. It's like, who knew that you could fly a 747 for NASA so people can look at a telescope up in the sky? It's like, there are so many things that aviation can do and that require aviation. So it's like, the list is infinite of what aviation provides for jobs wise.
Well, that was his part-time job. His full-time job was flying for United.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That guy was living the dream, the true living the dream. Yeah. Yep. Jeez, that's so cool. Oh man. I would love to fly a 747, let alone for NASA, so they can do some studies on stars and stuff. That'd be so cool.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah. Absolutely.
What was, all right, so we talked about, you probably didn't even list all the planes that you said and you were going on for a while, but what would you say is your favorite plane that you've flown? My favorite plane would probably be the Citation M2. The M2, all right. Yeah, people ask me all the time, and I say it's a pleasure to fly. Yeah, it's easy to fly. It's a nice airplane. It really is. Is that what you're flying right now, the M2, or what are you flying right now currently? Well, that one's pretty much sold right now, unless something happens. And it's leaving. There's a very, very high chance right now that it'll be replaced by a Challenger 300. Okay, nice. Yeah, not too shabby of an airplane to get into. No, we looked at one and it was just beautiful. Yeah, it was a beautiful plane. We looked at a couple, but this last one we looked at was just really nice. And whether I fly it or not really depends on what we'll end up doing with it. We'll have it for a little bit and use it
and it'll probably eventually go on a lease, long-term leases. It'll do.
All right, so let's kind of, you're talking about we and stuff. So the company you're a part of, are you what is your job? Are you the pilot? Are you kind of like, what do you do right now? I should ask.
It's complicated.
Yeah, sounds complicated.
I'll try to explain. Okay,
dumb it down for me.
I worked for the last 10 years for a helicopter company.
All right,
and helicopter company had about 100 helicopters around the country, 150 pilots. But the owner, who also was qualified in helicopters, was also qualified in fixed wing. And he had always kept a couple of fixed wing airplanes, and they had a 135 certificate, and he would buy and sell airplanes.
Yeah.
He had Citation jets, he had King Airs and stuff like that. It would be anywhere from 2 to 5 different airplanes at any one time. And while they were sitting, we would also use them on charter.
Right. And, why not? Make money off them.
Well, absolutely right. Yeah. And eventually, he decided it was time to retire, and he sold the company. Mm-hmm. But he kept the jets. And he went into a partnership on another jet with a couple of partners, and they didn't have a pilot. So I fly for that partnership now. Is what I do. But he still pretty much buys and sells airplanes. So that's why in the videos you see the planes that I'm flying changing so much. Yeah. If you look, I don't know how many planes, and a lot of them have been deleted by me. My older, the worst of the worst is gone. The ones that were just absolute embarrassments to see.
You took them off YouTube?
Yeah.
You don't want to be associated with those anymore.
Oh, yeah. But, and so that's kind of what put me here in this position. Yeah. I'm the only full-time pilot. The other guys we use are part-time. All right. And the frequency of flying goes up and down. All three of the partners have other homes. Okay. So sometimes in the summer, I may spend all my time going back and forth between St. Louis and Lake of the Ozarks. It's about an 80-mile trip, and that's what we use the Caravan for. Okay. And sometimes the M2, and I've gone there in the XL also. Yeah. It may depend on what's available. Yeah. Or how many people are going.
What would you say, how long are you gone per year? Would you say you're gone a lot, or is it kind of like on call, home every night type stuff? What's kind of your schedule like?
Well, that varies also. There is no schedule. Yeah. I'm on call 24/7 basically. And they'll go through these spurts where they do a lot of flying, and then there'll be areas where they slow down. Mm-hmm. And you'll see that affect my channel going up and down with the number of videos I put out. Right now we've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm actually working on a video I'm hoping to get out in the next 2 or 3 days. Oh, nice. But if all of a sudden, I get a call and they say, hey, we got to do this, or we've got a new airplane coming, we got to take care of it, this stuff, that affects everything. Yeah, no, definitely. Flying obviously comes first because, that's the job that pays the money, Right. People will think I've disappeared. Yeah. In a sense, I kind of have, but I'm not gone. Yeah. So I'm always pulled back to it when everything slows down. Yeah. And what I will do also that people don't realize is I also do Instagram, and I'll do these little live things on Instagram, and I'll do Instagram stories of trips and stuff. And sometimes you'll get these stories on my Instagram that will never be on my YouTube. And sometimes you get stuff on the YouTube that's not on the Instagram. No, for sure. So they really kind of complement each other is what they do. Cool. That's all. That's a good way to use both those mediums. So people are talking or not talking. Let's say people kind of hear that pilots are on call all the time. So they kind of just know that that's a thing for corporate. What is talk about like a day in the life of an on-call pilot? Like, I know things are very different. You can get called out at any time, but like, just say today you wake up. What time do you wake up? If you get called out, like what's kind of the process? How long do you have to get to the airport? What do you have to do and all that stuff? Okay. Well, it's different. If you're on call or on reserve for an airline or for a regional, that is a very different thing. Right. You've got specific hours that you're actually on duty, and you've got a time from the call to the time you have to be at the airport. With this job, I don't. Mm-hmm. I just know that at any time something can come up and they may need to go somewhere. And normally I get substantial notice, mm-hmm. but occasionally something happens, and either we can do it or we can't. And let's say this evening I'm after dinner I'm having a glass of wine with my wife, and they call and say, "Hey, we need to get down to Jacksonville right away." I'll say, "Hey, let me sober up my co-pilot."
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Throw him under the bus.
Yeah. I'll say, "Look, I just had a glass of wine. I wish I had known." And it's not something that I'm going to get punished for.
Right.
So, but like I said, I usually have a good feel of what's going on and what you can do. And they tend to be very respectful also, in that sense, and let you know ahead of time what's going on. But with people, things suddenly come up that they had no idea about, that are going to happen.
Life happens.
Yeah, life happens.
Yeah, life happens, definitely.
And you're the driver.
Yeah.
So
you're a tool that they use to further their business or to further themselves personally, or you're the Uber driver of the sky, essentially. Sometimes, you're just
that's absolutely right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's nice that they give you a notice, because a lot of places won't do that. A lot of places are like, "Hey, we need you now. Come on out." It's like, "I had a beer." It's like, "Oh, sorry, you shouldn't have done that." Next guy, next man up, it's that type of thing. So
that's right. But most places will let you know ahead of time what the rules of the game are.
Yeah.
And if they don't, you need to talk to them about that.
Yeah. You definitely need to establish rules if you're getting into the on-call world, because if you have similar expectations and you know what to expect, then there's no reason for you to be drinking when you think you should get called out, type deal. So definitely establish those.
Yeah. And I've never had that situation happen. Mm-hmm. Where I've had situations happen, where we couldn't meet a sudden pop-up was that I'm either flying one of the other airplanes.
Yeah.
And, hey, I'm dropping so-and-so off right now in Florida.
Yeah.
As soon as I get back, I'd be happy to do that. Stuff like that,
As soon as I get back, get some sleep, I'll be happy to come pick you up.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. All right. So,
but, if you, I was going to say, what they tend to do then is look seriously at the airlines, because in a practical sense, if you're in Southern Florida and they just want to go over to Kansas City and it's early in the morning, they can probably get a flight.
Yeah. For relatively cheap then too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So you mentioned earlier you flew for the regionals, and now you fly kind of corporate charter life. We'll talk a little bit about the benefits.
The charter's over. We no longer are on charters.
So you're just doing a corporate, essentially on-calls type stuff. Right. So talk a little bit about the benefits and the pros and cons of regional, pros and cons of corporate, and then talk about why. I know you talked about you quit the regional because they moved their domicile, which happens a lot. But are there any other reasons? Would you have stayed on with the regional and followed the airlines the whole way if they didn't move their domicile? Kind of talk about the reason why you kind of switched over to the corporate life.
Well, now one of my issues is, which ends up being an issue with airlines, major airlines, is my age. Mm-hmm. Because it used to be you had to retire at 60.
Right.
So you had to look at that time frame of how long you would be there and doing that. And at some point, it's not worth it unless you're just going to do it so you could say you did it. But I always had an opportunity that I was able to take advantage of there. But, there are definitely advantages to the airlines. You get a set schedule. Mm-hmm. And for some people, that's really important. And you get regular pay raises, and you get eventually, a higher income. What happens with corporate guys and charter guys, this is just my opinion, is you can start off making more money with the airline, and you kind of get hooked into that. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to go back in the other direction and take a pay cut, and then to start building back towards the higher pay.
Right. And so you're saying, I think you're saying that you make more money right away at corporate, you're saying?
I think it's possible. Not everybody does, but it's possible.
And it's hard to step away from that money because you take such a drastic pay cut. That's kind of what you're getting at. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that was in the past. I think it's changing now.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that there are fewer and fewer pilots, and they have to immediately compete to hire guys. Because I'm getting stuff in the mail now, like $20,000 signing bonuses for a regional airline and stuff like that. That was unheard of.
Absolutely.
I started doing this.
It's getting to the point now where a lot of mom and pop kind of 135 operations can't afford to pay the pilots what they need to pay to keep them from going to the airlines. Because exactly what we said, the corporate places were able to pay a better first year salary, second year salary. And they kind of get them hooked on living like, hey, you're making 80 grand as a pilot. I don't know how much, 60 grand as a pilot, but you're not going to go to the regionals and make 18 grand. So like we have you now. But now,
that's absolutely right.
Yeah. Now they've bridged that gap the airlines have. So it's going to be harder for the 135 guys, the smaller companies, or even some bigger companies to keep up with that.
Yeah. And there's another thing that because really at some point what happens with a lot of people is you go one of two directions. You either go to the airlines or you go to the corporate charter direction. And in the past, those two worlds didn't really cross over very much at all. Once you had gone down that road, you didn't see guys going back and forth. And the other thing about doing the charter corporate thing is it can be very interesting.
Yeah.
You're much closer to the people that own the business. You're going to places you would never go in the airlines, and you are being treated in a different way. And I say there are exceptions to everything, but I mean, you're eating in nice restaurants, you're staying in nice places. You probably know the president of the company on a first name basis with him. It's a very different atmosphere.
Definitely.
Than the airlines, because on the airlines, you're doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And when I was flying for TW Express, like we'd fly these routes, and without even trying, you would end up memorizing all the frequencies because you were doing the same routes over and over. Not only that, we were staying in the same hotels, in the very same room.
With the same bed bugs. Yeah.
Yeah, bed bugs, that's right. Eating the same Cheerios at 5 in the morning. Instead of having, a nice breakfast.
It's like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah. Like Mike and I, who I fly with a lot, if we go to Vegas, we'll see if we can't do something on a day when we're not flying, like go hiking or go out and do different things, go to a museum or something. We do a lot of that. And that's much more difficult to do with the airlines, because for the other thing is, you're flying for a different person every single time.
Yeah.
Almost every time. It takes a while till you cycle back around and end up with somebody that you had flown with previously.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're out there with a buddy of yours you've known for years and say, hey, let's go do this,
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes to the expectations of what you expect the pilot to do, because every pilot's different. Like if you fly, in your case, you fly with Mike over and over again, you can count on Mike to do the same thing at the same time, and it's preloaded or everything's there. But if you're flying with a new person every time, it creates a new dynamic where you're kind of feeling out, like the first couple of days or the first couple of flights, you're like, what's this guy like? Like, can he fly? Can he land? His first landing, you're kind of perked up a little bit, your hands closer to the yoke. You're like, all right, if I got to take over and save the day, I'm here. But when you got your buddy flying with you, who you know and who you can trust, you're kind of, I don't want to say complacent, because you're probably still like on top of things, but you're more relaxed, you're more like, I can count on this guy. There's a lot of truth to
that. Yeah. And that's really, standardization is so important. And the airlines have absolutely excelled at that. Yeah. But it's still very important in the corporate world. Because of, flying with somebody one day that you've never met before.
Yeah. You don't know anything about them. You don't know their backstory, but at the airlines or even some bigger corporate companies that have a huge compilation of pilots, they have set standards, essentially. It's not like a wild west where they're cowboys flying like crazy, but like they have the set standards, SOPs, so you should expect everything, but still everyone does something different. There's a lot of straying from SOPs, and even bigger airlines, I would assume. It's just how it is. People fly the way that they always were taught to fly,
That's right. I mean, you fly like your first instructor. In a sense.
For sure.
As far as the basics. One thing I thought about when I was instructing was because I ended up, actually probably several hundred people, getting them their certificate, and thinking, oh, those are like little mini-me's out there running around in the aviation world.
Little Captain Moonbeams, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Do they all have flight vlogs? Do they all record everything?
Oh. Let's hope not.
Yeah, I know, right? It's hilarious, yeah. No, I mean, it's true. I've talked about that before on the podcast. It's when I've always said that when you're an instructor, it's very important how serious you take it, because you are pretty much handing over this new person. You're teaching them how to fly. They're going to embody what you do, how you operate, how you think, how you kind of interact with other people, how you just associate yourself with aviation. They're the ones that kind of plant that seed in your head. And however they teach you, it's going to take you a long time to unteach that, you know?
So that is absolutely right, because that's primacy right there.
Yeah.
The first thing you learn, that learning goes the deepest. Yeah. It's hard to replace.
It is. So it's very important. And I saw this on Twitter. I don't remember who tweeted this or who said it, but they said, spend the extra money when you're first learning how to fly to try out some different instructors to really get a feel for what their personalities are like, for what their flying tendencies are like, because that can help you in the long run. Where if you say you just go to flight school and you accept whoever they want you to fly with, then you might get stuck with a bad instructor and you might have a bad outlook in aviation. But if you can spend a couple of extra $100 and try out one or two instructors, then you can find one that can truly teach you and you could learn from the best, essentially.
Well, that's not such a bad idea. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what the 141 schools do a little bit, mm-hmm. is they'll have you fly with other instructors as you go up through the certificates. That's interesting because, and I saw this a lot when I was instructing. You get these people that have gotten their instructor certificate strictly to build time and get to the airlines. It's just a stepping stone. That's their goal.
That's how they treat it. Yeah.
And most people, they still took it very seriously and were very good to work with and were professionals, even though they eventually moved some this. But you would occasionally get a guy every now and then who was resentful that they had to do that and had a bad attitude and tell you right up front, I'm only doing this till I become a captain on that 747.
Absolutely.
I hate this. And that's the kind of instructor you need to get away from.
Absolutely. Run as far away as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about the guy who say, I'm working on my career. I want to eventually go to the airlines. I'm talking about the guy who is extreme about it and is resentful about it, because a lot of the other people, they treat that part of their career just as seriously as any other part, and you can learn from them and, have a buddy years later that you had flown with.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, my instructors, I'm all still friends with. I've had great relationships with my instructors, and it's really cool kind of how you said to see all the people you instructed, to see where they're going, see all the little Captain Moonbeams around getting their jobs and flying for the airlines. And then I'm sure my instructors feel the same way. It's like, man, this kid actually made something with his life. Like, I can't believe after he almost put me in a spin and a power on stall, he knows how to fly a plane. Would you look at that?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Exactly. Yeah.
So it's funny.
Because anybody that's starting out with this, you got to give yourself a little forgiveness every now and then, because you are going to make those mistakes.
Yeah, it's normal.
You're going to do something and think, oh, that was so dumb. I can't believe that. Get over it. Put it behind you and learn from it. Yeah,
that's all you can do. Flying is all about learning from your mistakes. You're going to make mistakes and you can't dwell on them. You just have to continue to learn from them and kind of push yourself. If there's a crosswind, the only way you're going to learn how to perfect, or I say perfection with quotation marks around it, because there's no perfect landing or anything or a perfected technique. But the only way you're going to be more comfortable in those situations is by going up and flying. And it might be requiring you to go up with a CFI to come help you with your technique and crosswinds, but it's just something you got to do.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Absolutely right.
Yep. Well, let's talk about Captain Moonbeam. Why the name? Why the channel? Why the videos? Kind of what's your inspiration behind that?
It's not what you would think it would be. It started probably over 10 years ago.
Okay. So you were the original vlogger then?
Well, I wasn't the original, but it was way back when I started. Yeah. And I was really curious about YouTube because I'd watched a lot of stuff on it, found it really interesting about how to do it, how to make it work. And we had gotten, as a Christmas gift from my in-laws one year, a digital camera. And I loved it. I just started taking thousands of pictures. Yeah. Just loved it. And it would take these little, I think it was 240 by 360 short videos. Mm-hmm. And I started making little videos, and I thought, I'm going to see if I can put something up there. And my daughter and I made did this little duet. I think the first one was an Elton John song.
No way.
And, yeah. And
I was not expecting this to go that.
And then we did some Christmas carols also.
Are these on YouTube still, or did you take these down?
They are, but I think it was another channel.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
But I can't remember the password to the other channel.
No.
It takes forever to find it. But so we put it up there for relatives, basically out of town relatives. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to put some other stuff up, and made this really a kind of a copy of the original channel. Mm-hmm. And it was Captain Moonbeam, and we put I think originally we had put the Christmas stuff up there, and then I put some like 15-second clips looking out the front of the airplane for landings.
Oh, wow.
And we put maybe 5 or 6 videos up there, mm-hmm. and then I forgot about it. And about 6 months later, I got an email from Google, and Google said, would you be interested in monetizing your videos? I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So
monetize, monop, what? What do you?
I couldn't even find the password. I finally found the password for
That's hilarious.
The channel.
Yeah.
But the Captain Moonbeam thing was just a whimsical thing.
Yeah.
When we were doing this, and I went in, each of these little 15-second videos had like 10,000 views. There were Falcon 50s, Falcon 20s that had flown. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe there was some sort of a citation in there. And I thought, wow. I said, okay, sure. And after a couple of weeks, I made a penny. Made 2 cents, and I thought, oh my gosh,
I'm rich.
It's proof of concept.
Yeah.
But that's not why I was doing it. I just spoke about that. I did it because I wanted to share. Yeah. But at that point, I realized people were interested in it, and I was very interested in it. So I started sharing more and more different landings, and then would go on vacation. I'd put some videos up, some cruises and stuff, mm-hmm. like different things, and there was really no organization to it. There was no real direction. Well, and then my wife started pushing me, said, I can't watch another landing, because I always get her to watch. What do you think? What do you think? Yeah, please don't do that.
You're putting me to sleep. Yeah.
That's right. She said, this is not what people want to see. I'm saying, what are you talking about? People want to see airplanes. Everybody wants airplanes. She said, no, they want to see you. I said, no, they don't. And,
why do they want to see me?
Yeah. Well, they get to see an airplane. There's a beautiful plane, a great landing there. And so I kind of messed around and put myself in it. And when I did that, it was really kind of a surprise, because I actually got more viewers.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And
she was right.
That's kind of how she was right, which was a shock to me. I'd never even considered that in all of this. Yeah. And I still have to force myself to put myself in the videos, because it's not, it's not a comfortable thing just to pull out the camera and put it in front of your face.
Yeah.
And just
people are looking at you weird. It's like I took a selfie in the airport from LaGuardia because I was wearing one of my pilot shirts, and I just felt so uncomfortable taking that picture of myself. It's like I feel like people are judging me, like no one's gonna like this. It's like, why do I do this? But no, it's very uncomfortable.
I know what you mean. And sometimes what I will do, because I can find myself every now and then starting to slip away from having myself in there. Yeah. And then I will give myself, okay, for every image I take, and I do this with Instagram also, mm-hmm. If I put up 2 or 3 pictures on Instagram without a human being in it, I've got to put up myself or somebody else, so that it's not just stuff, because that was the kind of person I was when I took the first videos, the first pictures. I took pictures of landscapes, of airplanes, of stuff. And that's not what people really want to see. So that was a learning experience on my part.
You know, I'm still learning that because I'm similar to you. It's like, I don't like being the center of attention. Like, yeah, okay, I have a podcast. I like to talk about aviation, but I very rarely kind of talk about my story. I very rarely open up myself just because, I mean, it's a very vulnerable thing. You know, it's like when I started this podcast, I sat on it for a year. My wife, I don't know if you know the history. A lot of people do, but my wife's like, all right, you're playing too many video games. You need to do something that benefits other people, benefits your time. And I was just afraid of it. I was afraid of what people would think. I was afraid of what people would say, my friends. And it's like, once you do it and then it starts taking off, starts doing better, it just gets easier and easier. And you're like, man, I wish I would have done that a year ago. So it's kind of like with the vulnerability part for anyone that wants to create anything or even put themselves out there, it's just do it now. Just go for it. It's like you said, it's like you never know what people want to see and what they'll get out of your content.
Yeah, she is absolutely right. You know, to push you to do that.
Yeah.
Because unless you're, and I've got a friend that makes a living off doing video games, and in a sense, that's him sharing the experience with other people.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so much more rewarding to actually share the experience so that other people can vicariously live that experience through you. And
absolutely.
You know, the thing is, you said something. This is where I'm a little bit different because people can be pretty harsh, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, you know, you're the ugliest, you know, raccoon I've ever seen out there." You
people
know,
are mean,
like that.
Straight up mean.
They are mean. I could absolutely care less. That just does not in any way affect me. It's like, yeah, okay, I've got gray hair. Yeah, I've got wrinkles. You know. But I'm proud of them. They're from experience and all this. And, you know, if you don't like it, that's fine. I'm good with that. You know, there's lots of other stuff to watch. I hope that, you know, I put something up that other people enjoy.
Yeah,
but I just don't let that stuff bother me. And I think
it's hard not to. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It really is. And I think what other people have, from what I've noticed, on the internet, just a little digression here. Some people have a really tough time, I feel for them, and get involved in these discussions with people that are just tearing them up. Yeah. Which I don't get why you would do that.
No, not at all. Especially when you're offering free content for people to watch and to see, for everyone to enjoy. And it's just like, why take it dark? Yeah. It's like, well, I'm just here to shine light on this amazing career that I have and offer someone a chance to see what it's like to fly these type of planes. So yeah, it's like, what's this needed
for nothing. Yeah. And I think some people, speaking of value for nothing. Yeah. You know, I do make a little money off the, because I want to talk to this. And to me, this is important. I do make some money off the ads. I do make some money off the Patreon. It's not a lot. The Patreon, I appreciate everybody doing that. But I had an experience in our family with an older person who was sending out her money to anybody that did a promotion or anything like that. And I've always had this fear with the Patreon that there would be somebody that joined it that started sending more than they should for their situation. So I've really got this kind of odd relationship with it. I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. I always worry, though, about that person behind the screen that may be getting older and may not be thinking it through, that starts sending something that they really need.
No, I definitely agree with you. When I first started, I have a Patreon too. When I first started Patreon, I was kind of against it because I didn't want people to think I wanted to take advantage of them. You know, it's like, I didn't want people to think that I'll only do the podcast if someone pays me to do the podcast. I'm only here to make money, which I'm not. I'm here to create content. But one of my friends and kind of person that kind of helped me out and kind of talked to me a lot, it was Stabilizer Motion for Instagram. He kind of had a big Instagram following. And he was kind of like, no, man, these people want to give back for what you're giving back to the community. They want to give you something for your podcast because they love it so much and they appreciate it. And once I kind of wrapped my mind around that, and that it wasn't me necessarily like wanting their money, it was them saying like, hey man, great job. I appreciate what you do. Like that really helped me out with Patreon.
And I kind of came to the same conclusion also, you know, because I actually contribute to other Patreons also. And the ones that I contribute to are musicians, you know, people whose music I've used and stuff like that. So that's a a benefit that you get from them.
Definitely.
And it benefits other people. And I'm thinking, I need to support them also.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a really important thing, to support artists so that they can continue to put out things that
I agree 100%.
Other people really enjoy. Yeah. But I would also, without that and without the AdSense, I would still do this.
Yeah, it's fun, right?
I'm not doing it for it. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So I asked my followers if they had any questions for you. And I have a couple. I think I have 3 so far that were worthwhile of asking. Some of them, as you know, internet trolls. But one of them is from Mackenzie Luke 32. And it says, how long do you see yourself flying professionally?
That's a really good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is the one thing that's different in this industry. In the airlines, you had to retire at 60 originally as a captain. And you could stay on as a flight engineer until you were 65. But as a pilot, you were done at 60.
Right.
Then the law changed, and you could fly till you're 65. That's where it currently is with the airlines. At 65, you're done.
Yeah.
It's
checkmate, you're out. Yeah.
Yes. When I started in this industry down in Arkansas, one of the captains I flew with was 81 years old. I flew as his co-pilot in a Baron and a King Air, and he did a great job. He eventually lost his medical. He was golfing at the Little Rock Air Force Base in the middle of August, the middle of the afternoon, and he fainted.
Oh, no. When
he came to, his buddy was there next to him and said, "Oh, don't worry, I called an ambulance." And he was saying, "Oh, no, why'd you do that?" Yeah. and he ended up losing his medical.
Why'd you try to save my life?
That's right.
Now I can't fly. Don't you know what you've done?
No, that's absolutely right. That's how everybody thinks. And he would come out and have lunch with us all the time saying, I'm working on getting that medical back, And so the point here is, some places have a mandatory retirement at a certain age.
Yeah.
There are a lot of these companies, though, that there is no mandatory retirement. And if you're competent and you're somebody, they still won't.
Yeah.
Keep working there.
Yep.
And I've worked at a number of companies like that, and I see it all over the place. I met a guy, I forgot about this, out of Kansas City, and he was older than 81.
Oh, wow.
And he was still instructing, teaching a ground school, and flying a jet for another company.
Dang, good for him.
And he had a sports car out there. He was
he was loving life. There are some guys that just don't want to get rid of it, It's like, I don't know if they got into it later or if it's what they've always done. It's like, hey, if I'm 82, if I'm still in good health, if my mind is still there, why not? Why not go teach?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Why waste it? And it's important to have a purpose.
Yeah.
And that gives you, some people, that's their purpose.
Agreed.
But you got to be careful, because if all of a sudden you can't fly and you lose your purpose, then what do you do?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to also have a purpose outside of aviation.
Oh, I 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. If I lost my medical, I would still be
involved in aviation.
I'd be in aviation. I'd probably, travel in my truck with my wife. We've got a little 2-person trailer. I'd make videos of that.
Nice.
And that sharing, is a type of purpose also.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. I got another one for you. This one is from The Jimmer. And we kind of talked about this earlier. It says, I've seen him fly maybe 4 different aircraft types. Which is the most and least favorite? So if you had to choose one that you love the most, which we already talked about, but you can say it again, and choose your least favorite.
I have a least favorite.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, but I hate to say, because, somebody put a lot of time and money into creating an airplane.
Yeah, that is true.
So I hate to really trash an airplane.
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily trashing an airplane. It's just kind of like where you rank it in the planes that you have flown. It's like you can't help if another plane is better than that plane.
Well, part of the problem was the airplane did not really fit our missions. And I'll tell you what it was. It was the Mustang.
Okay.
Which is a little 4-seat airplane, jet.
Yeah, little tiny jet.
I think the smallest jet they've ever made.
Yeah.
And it just did not fit our missions at all.
Okay.
I don't know why. I'm sure he got a good deal, and that's why he bought it.
Right.
And he had it for about a year and eventually sold it.
Okay.
And because so often we carry more than 4. And go longer ranges and stuff. I've always said that jet is perfect for a businessman that's operating a region, within a region like the West or something like that. And he's always traveling with 2 or 3 business associates or something like that. Yeah. But like I said, it just didn't fit our mission. And like I said, my favorite, then again, is the Citation M2. Mm-hmm. So that plane was absolutely just a pleasure to fly. And the reason he decided to get rid of it was he decided that he wanted to start going further with more people.
Okay. So it reached its limitations. You loved the plane for the mission that it could offer, but you wanted to kind of a bigger, better, and faster, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. All right. I like this question a lot. And I don't know if I'll be able to say the username right, but it's aviator.dieg. He'll know who he is when he hears it. It says, what's something you would tell young aviators to stay away from when trying to build time?
This is a very good question.
It is.
Because I'll tell you a story.
And I'm glad you're answering it, not me.
Yeah. And years ago, when I was working as an instructor, there was another instructor there, a young guy who had gotten a job in, I'm not even sure what kind of airplane it was. It was a jet. I'll tell you that. It was a jet in the right seat. And the guy that he was flying with was very hard to get along with. And he'd say, he's doing this, he's doing that. I just can't believe this and that. And he was thinking, I just got to build some jet time. I got to build some jet time and move on. And he'd say, he was making me cry and all this stuff,
Oh my gosh.
And nobody really just saw it as, hyperbole, exaggeration. Yeah. And so eventually he moved on. And he asked me, he said, this guy asked me to find somebody else to replace me. Are you interested in doing it? I said, oh, yeah, flying a jet, sure, yeah. And he said, no, you need to think about this because he can be really hard to work with. And I thought, you know what? I can put up with anything. And so I did it. And this person was very difficult to work for. Mm-hmm. It was not a crew concept at all. Yeah. And I feel like he was intentionally trying to sabotage me.
Wow.
So that he didn't look so bad. He looked better.
Oh my gosh.
In front of the people. It was a weird situation.
Yeah.
And, but he didn't get to me like he did the other guy.
Right. That probably made him more mad that he didn't get under your skin.
It made it get worse and worse. And finally, and this is really kind of the funny part about it, he called up the other guy and told him, this is just not working out. I want you to call Jim and tell him that it's
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a part-time thing. Oh, yeah. It was like only $125 a day flying in the right seat jet. And so he calls me up. He says, hey, I just talked to him. He just told me he wants me to call you. And I said, you know what? That says everything right there that he doesn't have the kahunas to call me himself.
Yep.
But what I learned from this was, and I'm not going into details because if I told you details, you just like, what the heck?
Well, I wish people could see the way your face changed when you talked about him. I wish I was recording this video because your face got so serious and was like, I did not like this guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but there's something really funny about this coming later. Okay, so he was telling this guy, I didn't have what it took to be a pilot. I didn't think I should be a pilot and stuff like that. So I thought, this is just fine because, this was not going anywhere where it needed to go.
Right.
And what I learned from this lesson was not every job is worth taking.
Right.
Sometimes you're better off to keep looking.
And that's hard to do when you're a young pilot because you need time. You need quality time. It's like for me, I wasn't a CFI. I jumped in the aerial survey world and I flew some really poor condition airplanes. because I didn't know any better. And I just I got to build my time. Everyone else went there. It's like they built their time. They were fine. Of course, I'm flying a 206, lose the engine over the mountains in West Virginia, and I land on a mountain. It's like, it happened to me, but it's like what you said. It's kind of like what you said. It's like, I mean, when you're young, you're very vulnerable to building time and what people say. Yeah, you have great stories to tell, but it's not like I shouldn't have had to experience that. No one else should have to experience that. But it was all,
I can relate to that.
Yeah, it was all building time. It was all, what do you have to do to build time? You know, you're kind of, for lack of a better word, you're just like putting yourself, you're just putting yourself out there to build time, and you expose yourself to things you shouldn't expose yourself. So you need to try to be smart, because I mean, the end of the day, your life's not worth that time that you're building. You know, your family needs you home. You don't need to put yourself in that bad situation. So definitely take a step back and look at it.
Yeah. Oh, but I got to finish this story. You're going to love this part of it. So years later, I'm at, I think it was Semi-Flight, doing a recurrent in a Gulf Stream.
Okay.
And I ran across the guy. And we talked for a minute, and at that time, I was director of operations for a company that had Gulfstreams, Citation 650s, and CJs.
Nice.
You know, and he was telling me, oh, yeah, you know, I had to leave the other company for some, it was very unclear, but apparently in the separation, they had paid for a recurrent in a Learjet, and that's what he was there for. And he said, "Here, you know, if you need anybody, here's my resume." And I said, I was polite, you know, okay, well, thanks, appreciate it, good luck, all that. Then the next day, I don't know what happened, but I saw him being removed from the class.
Oh no!
Oh yeah. I don't know what happened, what the situation was, whether it was payment or what, but it was not, looked like they weren't having a pleasant conversation.
Right. Huh.
And so that's how that ended, you know, with him asking me for a job after all that. And so here's something to keep in mind also. If you're one of those guys, or anybody, aviation is a small industry relatively, where a lot of people know everybody else. You need, if you need to be very careful about giving somebody a hard time unnecessarily.
Right. Agreed.
If you can solve it in any other way, do that, because it comes back.
Well, let's say this. So say you're building your time. You were very thankful for the job that you had. It's run its course. So you have your time. You're ready to apply. You might even have a job already, and you're on your 2 weeks notice, and you're fed up. You know, it's like, it is not worth you getting upset, causing a scene, becoming just a monstrous person that doesn't want to do anything because you know you're moving on. You know, you're at your next goal. So you're finally going to tell them what you didn't like about the job, what you thought they could have done better, how you're the best. It is not worth it, because that guy probably has so many connections. He has probably helped out so many pilots, or had so many pilots work for him that had a good experience. And then when he goes to, like, say you get hired by another corporate job, and he knows the guy that flies that's on the board or flies the plane, and he calls him and be like, "Hey, your new pilot just yelled at me and told me how bad my operation is." And the guy's like, "Well, I don't want that around me." And then you get fired. It is not worth it at all. It's like, keep your mouth shut and just say, "Thank you. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you letting me fly this beautiful plane around." Even if you had to lose an engine and land on a 206 or land on a 206 in a mountain, it's like, thank you so much for that opportunity. I really appreciate it. I am very thankful for this, and now I am moving on. It's like, just P's and Q's, be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can be nice to people, that's the way to go.
Exactly.
You know, and I don't have anything to prove.
No.
You know, so I don't have any reason to beat up on anybody. You know, some people may just be having a bad day or something.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't know.
All right. Well, you have made it almost to the end of the podcast. I have one more thing for you. It is the rapid fire section. And you just say the first thing that comes to your mind. I'm asking you very simple kind of aviation related questions. They're not hard questions. They're just kind of like, what's your favorite food at an airport? That kind of stuff. You ready? All right.
Yes.
So you are connecting at an airport and you are starving. You have about like 30 minutes to get some food. What is your go-to airport food?
Cheeseburger.
Okay. What's your favorite FBO to go to?
I don't have a favorite.
Okay. What is your favorite? What do you like in FBOs? What kind of makes a good FBO? Like snacks, the recliners that they have for you to take a nap in?
Well, I will tell you what I don't like in FBO.
Yeah, there we go. Let's do that.
This is if you work at FBO, you need to listen to this. When we have a rental car, do not bring the crew's rental car to the aircraft before the passengers leave.
There you go. Okay.
You don't know how many times I've had our rental car brought to the airplane right by the door, and the passenger's rental car is nowhere in sight.
Oh. Bye, guys. We'll see you later. Sucks to be you.
Yeah.
That's funny. No, I mean, that's definitely true. All right. What's your favorite airport that you've ever landed at?
My favorite airport? I like my home airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your least favorite airport, if you have one?
My least favorite airport would probably be Aspen and Eagle.
I don't have an issue with Eagle more as Aspen because it's just unnecessary.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with the people. The facilities are great. The people are great and all that. Yeah. But it seems like weather is always an issue. Yeah. It's like, always an issue.
And then the 7-degree glide slope, it's like, it's just not necessary.
Oh, yeah. And then you get on the ground in the wintertime. There's no place to put your airplane in hangar or something.
Yeah, no.
Because space and it's covered with ice.
Yep. It's crazy. What is the most challenging approach that you've flown?
The most challenging approach would be going into Eagle.
Okay. Let's say, are you Android or iPhone guy?
Android.
Oh, Microsoft or PC or Mac?
PC.
Nice. Look at that. The software guy loves the PCs and the Android.
Yeah.
If you could fly over anything, would you rather fly over the ocean, the beach, the country, or the mountains?
The beach.
Okay. And let's see. What else do I have? What's your favorite airline?
Southwest.
What's your favorite airline livery?
That's a tough one. It would probably be 1960s Delta.
Okay. Piper or Cessna?
Cessna.
All right. Let's see. What is the ugliest plane you've ever seen?
The ugliest plane?
Yeah.
I've seen some pretty ugly airplanes. Ugliest airplane I have recently seen was a Challenger in the islands, and the paint was so horrible it made me nauseous.
That's funny.
It was. I kid you not. It was the color of vomit. It was
wow.
like, oh.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Let's see. I had one off the top of my head and I can't think of it anymore. So I just asked, what's the ugliest airplane? What is... Oh, well, I'll end it there. That's all I can think of right now. So, Jim, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I truly appreciate... I figured it out. Who is an aviation influencer or creator that you've always wanted to either collab with or meet?
I've got a couple of them.
Yeah.
I find Steve Oknievo interesting, and I find Flight Chops interesting, and there are probably a couple of others that just aren't coming to mind right now. What I would like to do would be to run across them in an FBO.
That'd be cool.
And do an instant collaboration right there. Because actually coordinating something else because of their work schedule and mine,
it's hard.
Very, very difficult.
Very difficult.
Yes. But I think that'd be a lot of fun to fly with.
Yeah.
It'd be
for
interesting.
Sure. Well, perfect. Those are actually all the questions I have now for you. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for kind of sharing your journey today and kind of talking about more about you and more about your story. I think that people will really appreciate it. And shout out to, I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, but it's Deuce19. He's been begging me to have you on. So it's finally here.
I'll have to go check you out. Deuce19.
I'll message you his username. He'll freak out if you send him a message and say hi. He said that he's got a decent amount of followers. He just loves you. He said that if I don't get you on the podcast, he'll stop listening. So he threatened me.
Oh, okay. Good. He's my kind of guy.
Yeah, I know, right? But I appreciate you coming on. And I think people really appreciate your story and kind of hear your background and find out more about you. So I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation.
No problem.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll have you on again sometime soon.
I'd be happy to.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great day.
Oh, you're welcome, and fly safe out there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Aviation, thank you guys for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review on iTunes. You can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/pilotthepilot, our Instagram page @pilotthepilot, and our brand new website, like I was talking about earlier, pilottopilot.hq.com. Please let me know what you think. I think it's a beautiful design and it is the first of many cool things in the future. So Avination, I thank you guys. And I want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters. This is for the $20 and up group. You get a keychain, a sticker, and a t-shirt. I want to give a shout out to Micah Maziar, Matteo Calagueri, John McCall, Stuart Roderick, Garrett Green, Kylie Giffen, and Abner Cordero. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you'd like a shout out, go ahead and check out Patreon and you can become a Patreon supporter today. I could not do it without my Patreons. Avination, I hope you have a great day. And as always, happy flying.